Hello everybody and welcome to your Tuesday lighting critique. It is now December 1st. I can't believe it's December already, which means, and it's the first of the month, which means we are ending one challenge and starting a brand new one. So now we have our sushi party challenge. So for this one, we wanted to create kind of a small little world with lots of little vignettes that you can make and lots of little scenes. So we created this whole sushi scene. And what we want is we want you guys to kind of go around and kind of tell a story going around the whole space. So we've got, some maki rolls and sushi swimming around in the pool. We've got a little dance party going on. We've got this is a render by Jordan. This is just our rice cat. And we really wanted the opportunity for you guys to kind of explore the space, play around with some macro photography stuff. And really just have some fun with it. So like all of the arms on these characters are interchangeable. You can move them around. And also we really wanted you to have the opportunity to play with some like really nice subsurface scattering on some of the sushi elements. So we've got some of that in place, but it'll need to be dialed in a little bit, given your individual shot. But yeah, we thought this would be a really fun challenge for you. The one difference is that with COVID and the holidays and everything coming up, I was trying to envision what it would be like to submit around December 31st, and it just seemed like a lot. So what we're doing this time is we are going to extend the deadline until January 31st. So this is going to be your December and January lighting challenge. But then we promise in February we're going to have something really exciting that we're working on, and we hope to announce in February. So without much further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our lighting critique. Okay, so first off, I want to do the video that was submitted by Dani. So again, he's working with our animated reference or animated sequence that we have as part of the Lighting for Animation bundle. Looking at his reference, I think this is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I can't imagine it being from anywhere else. Again, foreground's a little bit darker. The lighting starts at about a third of the frame up. The key light's coming in from behind. We've got a fill light coming in from the screen left side. And the main objects are dark silhouetted. So let's keep that in mind as we're going into this. So no shaders here, but you're getting the idea. And so I think everything is working pretty well. I think everything's looking pretty good. There are a couple things that I want to draw attention to that are positive, like the ramping up of the light. It's kind of pocketing there and it goes a little bit darker as we go here. So it's nice for the character to move into the light. I love that idea, is like moving into the goal, into the end point. That's really, really good. There's a couple things about, like, the color is interesting to me because like we've got, and also you're creating some really nice shaping here. I love the shaping overall. Like I love that we've got this side of the wall brighter. Like there's good shaping up here. There's good shaping around here. Characters getting shaped well. But a couple things about the light that I'm questioning is, one is the fill side over here is not as, let's look at the reference. It's not quite as dark as what we're getting on the reference side. And it's also now becoming like yellow green, right? And so I think that's a little bit interesting. I would expect it to go darker and then just like a darker variation, like, so we're not getting as much red influence and would fall more into the blues. I wasn't expecting this yellow color. And the other thing that I wanted to notice was that the character here feels very blue neutral, and then it steps more into the warm light, which is, again, it's fine, but it's almost like when you have a scene like this, it's a little bit of the key light that's adding that warmth, but it's a lot of the skylight. So I would add, you want her to be a little bit of in that red warmth in here, because right now she just kind of feels like she's in a totally different world than the trees. And same thing with this side of the roof. So I would add a little bit more warmth into your skylight, and make that transition from shadow to key a little less so in the hue. Just because, I mean, the value is good. I like the value shift. I like that she's stepping into the light. I like that she's going from darkness to lightness. I just don't want to see that much of a shift from like no pinkish red to a lot of pinkish red. that's pretty much it. And then the other thing that will be a challenge for this, and this is a challenge for anybody who's lighting this scene, is these flat elements of the house. So like this shape is just like one big flat shape, and it's like, how do you get variation in here? Do you get variation in the shader? Do you create like a gradient in there? Do you create a gobo light on there that's just going to put it like a pocket of light around the door or something? You need to be creative in figuring out the way that you get a little variation in there. All right, so that is Dani. So let's go ahead and hop over. Now we'll go through alphabetically. And for starters, we have Aaron T. So Aaron has this scene that was based on this concept art. In fact, let me just go through and make these bigger. I forgot to do that before I started. So these are all the images that we're going to go through today. All right, and I added some of these for my own reference. Okay. Make this one small because for whatever reason, when Photoshop, when it gets too big, it just goes into like a grid. Okay, so it was this scene, and you wanted to replicate this. You did a couple test renders, and also looked at some reference here as well. So I just kind of want to talk about that. So first off, the one thing that's really interesting, and okay, the first thing that you pointed out was that there's two main light sources. There's light coming through the window here, and or the screen door, and then also the light that's coming in back here. The interesting thing to me about this is that the character isn't being lit by either of these lights, and the character is in the shadow, and there's nothing really drawing our eye to him or her. In the shadows, not being hit by the key light, similar value, similar tone, similar hue to the surroundings. So like not really getting picked up by the by this light. Now, if a little bit of this light trickled in on this character and got a little bit of a rim back here, or like a little bit of bounce up in there, that would separate the character out from the blue surroundings. If somehow the character was positioned in a way that he was like in this region here, it would allow the character to be silhouetted by that blue light. But overall, it's the character's kind of receding into the shadow, almost like they're hiding. I also wasn't sure the object that the character was holding. At first I thought it was a game console, so I was like, oh, you could just do a little light shining up at the character's face, but now I'm not so convinced that is what it is. But just something to point out there. The other question that you had was talking about this screen door and getting these silhouettes, and you're totally right. There's two ways to do it. Number one is the way that looks better and will give you better results, which is to actually do it physically, like put a shader, a translucent with subsurface scattering shader on this on the screen on this area here. And then what will happen is, and then put some objects back behind it to get that silhouette, and then it'll cast shadow out here. It'll do all the stuff that's happening in this reference, and you'll have the opportunity to do that. Now, you were talking about not blowing up your render times, so that's totally a concern. And the other thing that you could do, which will look worse, but will be could be more efficient, is you can map an image onto the plane here. So it's like you almost would take something like this and then flatten it out and then project that onto the screen doors with a map, and then in the comp you could kind of glow it up a little bit. You wouldn't get the light spilling out on the floor as well. You'd have to simulate that another way, just through like some additional lights. But that is an option for you. If it was me, I mean, I would go through and work the shader, so it's like, there is some subsurface, there is some transmission, possibly even emission, and then create objects back there that will actually create the silhouette that I'm going for. Now, let's see. Yeah. So, the other thing about the reference is we're not actually seeing the light source, and I would kind of recommend doing that, because what that'll do is allow you to create a more substantial angle and push these shadows at a more diagonal, which makes the scene a little bit more dramatic. And then watch out for the bright lights that are kind of shining through the doors and under the cracks there. Probably don't want too much of that, because that just it makes it seem like there's a super bright outside world there that we're just not seeing. So just be on the lookout for that. But that is the main takeaways that I would have for you is, So focus in on the screen door because that'll matter. The structure is looking pretty well. And if you do position the character there, then you'll totally get the rim over the blue background and all that stuff. It's just when the character was down in that region that I was more concerned about that. But yeah, I think the structure is good. Oh, last thing, totally random. Take this character, if this character is your human scale, and just to see, slide it back over there because I want to make sure that door is tall enough. It feels odd to me that, so like this thing hanging up here, like if you look here, it's the same. Like this, like when you hang your hat on something, it's maybe like I'm about 5'9", and it's like maybe a few inches above me, so maybe 6 to 6.5 feet. Where a doorway is going to be around 8 or 9 feet, so it feels odd that they're in alignment with each other, and it feels odd that there's this much space up here. I would expect the door to be a little bit higher. So just check your scale on that because it is throwing me off a little bit. Okay, let's hop over to Annabelle. Annabelle, again, this is looking great. Beautiful stuff. Biggest thing for you to work on when comparing this versus your reference, which is great. All of your reference images, the four pictures of people at the top, have some sort of element that's allowing the character to pop off from the background. This is a more desaturated background here. I mean, his crazy eyes are going to pop out, and the fact that this eye is getting like a shaft of light in there really helps. But we've got the warm key light over the cool background, and then the fill light is darker tonality than this background. So those are both standing out. We've got warmth over cool here, as well as an extreme amount of value difference. We've got very, very, very bright light back here, and then her dark shape is more silhouetted. And then in here, we've got these warm tones in the foreground over the cooler background here, and then this down here is just kind of desaturated. Now, when we flip back to yours, the tones are, especially between her, the headwear that she's wearing, is matching up in a similar tone as the background. It's a little bit brighter, but not a lot. And overall, her value is, although, like we can take a look here at the luminosity, although her value of her cheek is slightly brighter than the background, like the mid-tones are all about the same. So what I think that I would really like to see you work on in this iteration is finding a way to get her to pop off a little better. And I think the best way to do it, just because everything is a combination of the warm skin tones and the kind of magentas here. So it's going to be hard to find a color back there to separate. You have to do it in value. You have to darken the background or figure out, or maybe like super brighten it. But I think there's a way that we can add more, it might even be a matter of adding a building back there or some sort of element back there that will allow it to fall into this realm a little bit more. Even these flowers that are back here, allow them to fall into shadow a little bit to allow her brighter foreground to pop forward a little bit. And you don't even have to put anything in there. It could be like pretending there's something off camera that's casting a shadow in this way. And then the other thing that I would, and you can do this here too if you want, just because the key position in this one is similar to the other ones, you may just want to play around with like maybe a key light that kind of comes in low and from behind this way, just to see. But if you think that looks awful, then always err on the side of what looks the best. So that would be my advice for you to move forward there. All right, and for Ashley, again, this is looking so much more cohesive, so much stronger of an image than when we started with. I think you should be extraordinarily proud of what you've accomplished. And there's just a few last little things to clean up. I would add a touch more roughness to her skin, because looking at this specular highlight and the specular highlights down here, they're a little tight, a little bit metallic on her skin, and just like roughing them and making them a little bit broader will help a lot. But their existence is a great thing. The other thing about the characters, I do think we can go a little bit brighter and a little bit more saturated on her. So like something along these lines. A little more saturated, add a little more contrast too. Just pushing her just a little bit more will really help out a lot. And those are really the two things that I have for you that I think would make a big difference. Bonus points if you want to add, if this is an Arnold, if you want to add like a little light blocker in here, just to get a little touch of variation coming up the underside of this tree. So it's because it is feeling a little bit consistent in tone, and just getting like a slight bit darkening in there. That's it. Other than that, I think you're in really great shape. Oh, Danny, that got your reference there. Okay. And last up for today, we have Cat. So Cat, really, like really great image. Love the concept of it. You're doing some really beautiful things. The background to the foreground character looks good. I love the angle, like the slightly askew angle of the character is really something interesting, and something that's very, very cool, because it also, like, cutting off just the top of the character's head at the top, it's a little disorienting. It makes it feel like something is a little askew. It's not a traditional framing method. Also, the aspect ratio isn't traditional. Like it feels like there's something going on, right? Like this isn't like his school yearbook photo. So I was looking at this and I was thinking that, like, I don't know anything about this guy, but he feels like a detective from a film noir. And so I started looking more into film noir stuff, and also The Godfather, which I'll come back to The Godfather here in a second. But the biggest thing from these is that they are not afraid. This is one style of lighting that is not afraid to plunge a face into darkness and really use very specific minimal light to generate mood and to push the eye where we need it to. Now, The Godfather. Now, the way that I would do this is I would shoot this, in a much more brighter, with more fill light setup, and then if I wanted to go this dark, I would crank those values around in the comp, because you can always go darker in the comp. Now, the director of photography in The Godfather did not do that because he was afraid the studio would make it too bright and too happy and too airy. So he shot the film this way and plunged Marlon Brando's eyes into darkness here. And that's crazy. He basically did not give them any leverage to lighten that up, and really forced the hand of the movie studio to make sure that his vision for the lighting was kept. I just think that's such a brave and cool story. And I would not recommend it to any of you. Give yourself a little leeway. But all that being said, I think that you're on the right track. We just need to do a couple things. And number one is, don't be afraid to push the values even a little bit darker than what we have here in the shadows. Like you can allow us to lose some of the value in there. Number two is, I actually think there's too much light on the character right now. I think we've got this red light coming in, which is really cool, and we've got this light shape that's coming in that's really cool. But I think they're competing with each other, and I think they're counteracting each other and actually giving us too much light. So I would choose one over the other, and I think I would eliminate this. This is what I would do. I would eliminate that red light, allow this light to creep in here, allow this rim light to come in, because I think that's tying up really nicely to that light. And watch out that it's getting a little bit red where this light is a little bit more orange. Allow this part of his face to go into more darkness, and only be illuminated a little bit by the tip of the cigarette, just like a little bit of light on there. And then you can go ahead and make the tip of that cigarette brighter. That will plunge a lot of the shirt and his tie and stuff into darkness. And we want to, I don't know if you have the ability to run ambient occlusion, but basically you want to just add a little contact shadow in there if you can. If anything, you can just fake it in Photoshop or something. And same deal here with the connection point between the cigarette and his lips. And lastly, just watch, like, we've got some really nice soft shadows in here. And then the second we get to the t-shirt, it like jumps, it's almost like it jumps into focus right there, which isn't what we want. But just watch out for that. But yeah, this is got so much potential. It's very cool. I'm excited with where you're going. And yeah, so that's it for today. If you all have any questions at all, make sure you reach out. And and then the lighting challenge for November, Prisha, we will be announcing the winner on Thursday. But I'm organizing up all those images, and we'll get those posted soon. All right, happy lighting, everybody.